There is no America. There is no democracy. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business. And I have chosen you to preach this evangel.
For all my free market healthcare robbing, stock stealing, retirement fund fucking with niggas. Fuck you little credit card scam and jewelry stealing, crack selling, liquor store robbing motherfuckers. Shout to the homies, Carnegie, OG, Willie Randolph Hearst, Baruch, Rockefeller, the real Rockefeller, my main bitch Leona, Puerto Little Louis XIII, Scott Rothstein, Jack Abramoff, hold your head, my real top niggas, let's get this money. I spend my day pepping America overseas, pension for the workers, nigga please, embezzlement, etiquette, private settlement, I'm better with Confederate rhetoric from my mansion in Connecticut, foreclose of it, close out the tenement, I twist words like a speech impediment, I hope you got good credit, bitch, if not, better get a new job with benefits, while I play golf with niggas and get cheddar with, new money buys brand new carrots, my old money bunch of great grandparents, you got grills in your mouth, I ain't mad at you, I own every gold mine in South Africa, thanks baby, you made me a billion, plus I own a building, for each one of my children's children.
Again, it's always great to, have somebody of, I guess, like I said, somebody who's on the inside, somebody who is, you're in these, basically our target group is, the future. We want the future to know what is ahead of them. This is why we do shows on transhumanism and Israel and, past history, because, history is not taught to us in school. Therefore, we are, most of us are doomed to repeat it. Again, all these, there's a lot of people who listen to us, every week, Chris. I know you wanted to get in the left-right paradigm, too, but I really got to thank you for addressing the Israeli issue, as it's really these, people may be curious, and I may just be venting here. And if I am, and people take me as an ass, that's fine. Give me a fucking break. I've done how many goddamn shows throughout 3 years, and I don't think I've ever come on the radio once and ever vented and talked to myself or ranted for an hour straight like Alex Penatag Jones and the rest of the people do. But I just want to say straight out, if people are curious about this, go and do what I had to do, all right? For instance, we have people, and there's nothing wrong with asking questions. Absolutely nothing wrong. But do so respectfully, you know what I'm saying? In other words, we got people who want to know, the dynamics of this, of Israel, America, and Germany, what differences there are, what's, the same. And basically, we can look at, for instance, somebody who is not serious about actually learning these things, they come at you with these ad hominem attacks, such as, the word anti-Semitic is an ad hominem, all right? It means absolutely fucking nothing. It means it's a made-up word, okay? But again, these people who want to know things, man, the only way that they are going to be able to find out for themselves, and decipher what has really been going on, is to go ahead and I'm able to speak on this shit because I divulged myself in, religious studies and things like that when I had the opportunity to in school. And, again, I read I was speaking to somebody on my wall earlier about, this whole thing, and I was saying that, the Torah and the Talmud, man, I read that so many times, and it was so amazing to me, afterwards, like I said, in the Talmud, the word Holocaust is actually defined as burnt sacrifice, all right? So, and, it further goes on to say that the sacrifice of millions of Jews to bring out the pure Jewish bloodlines in order to form the state of Israel. So this is actually said in it. And like I said, I've read these books quite a few times over, and it never stuck to me. You see what I'm saying? Because it said Holocaust, so automatically I thought Nazi Germany, Hitler, so on and so forth, right? So, after these two books, about a couple years later, I'm reading Mein Kampf. I'm reading, the diary of Hitler while he was a political prisoner, whatever you want to call it, while he was incarcerated. He wrote the Mein Kampf there. And I was reading it, and, I was like, man, this kind of sort of like hate speech against, again, it wasn't a white race that he wanted. He wanted an Aryan race. He wanted a blonde hair, blue eyes type thing. Well, the Jews, they were no different. They are no different. They created this state of Israel through the help of the British, the U.S., the U.K., other countries, and they went ahead and selected Hitler. This is why he was democratically elected. Democrat society is the minority. The majority ruling. I'm sorry, the minority ruling the majority, and that's how it was. So, again, man, people really need to look up these words. When people say, things like Holocaust and all this other stuff, we need to look at the real Holocaust. What the real Holocaust is happening right now in today's world, in today's timeline, is happening right now to the Palestinian brother. So, people again have to understand that, you go out there and just acquire that information for yourself, all right? What we accomplished in World War II underneath the British Empire and the now State of Israel, this formed a world power in the Middle East. All right? With that help of people like Himmler and Hitler, they literally brought things from the Torah and the Talmud that the Jews only once believed in faith that could be possible. In other words, a cleansing of their race in order to preserve a bloodline. Sounded exactly like Hitler. So I had to go back and I had to read it. And again, look at things like let's look at Ernest Zundel. Ernest Zundel spent 7 years in prison just for asking the question: did 6 million really die? Anybody sitting here listening to me right now, go right ahead, look it up. Look up Ernest Zundel. I want you guys to look up all this stuff. Treblinka, look up, all these people who have put in actual physical work. We're not talking about things that were just documented or written down for shit's sakes, or a guesstimate of 6 million. If you even look at the Auschwitz stone, the Auschwitz memorial has been changed over 10 times. I have 2 of the versions on the event page. Well, between 1940 and 45, it said 4 million people murdered and died here at Auschwitz is what they're saying. 4 million people they're trying to claim died here. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that nobody didn't die. Again, you know what I mean? There is justification, because real people have to die in order for real shit to happen. So, yes, I'm not trying to discredit any type of blood loss or whatever, but what I am trying to point out is the discrepancies within this and those people who keep on bringing it up without actually going out and achieving this information and attaining it for their own use and knowledge.
Talking about that and all this stuff about, that's exactly, when you start reading about all this stuff and really looking, if you even research, there's many inconsistencies in the numbers that they gave about what really happened during the Holocaust in Germany. But more importantly is that that was the past, and today what the Israelis are doing with help with Mossad and all their other organizations, their army, is causing a racial apartheid, like the one that we said was going on in South Africa, and we supported Mandela. The same thing is happening right now in Palestine, where if you are a Palestinian, you are automatically, inferior to the Israeli people over there, and you can't. It's like what you heard about the Jim Crow laws in the South, and also people are getting murdered. Little kids are getting killed. People's houses are getting destroyed, just so the Israelis can keep expanding and putting their settlements, and they just want to take every last bit that's left of Palestine and make it theirs.
You're absolutely correct. And you know what? People will again, man. You make a really good point there in defending the Palestinians, because it's really different. Again, you're trying to, hey, the past is the past. Well, not exactly. The past is more so the present, if anything. Again, we by the formation of Israel being a state. Okay, this then allowed us 30 years later to infiltrate places, that the Mujahideen, Muslim Brotherhood, these what we call extremist groups over here in the West refer to as, if they are so terroristic in nature and so demeaning towards the value of life, then what are we, quote unquote, one of the greatest nations in the world, unquote? What are we doing involved in operation of terror cells? What is our involvement in that?
Well, Brandon, can I speak on something real quick? I didn't mean to just jump in here. I wanted to speak on what we were talking about on Monday's show with Stu Webb. Said that they had done the genome mapping, and 8 out of 10 Palestinians are the quote-unquote original 12 tribes of Israel. And if you want to get right down to it, that's why they want them exterminated. They don't want those people around. Those are the true people who belong in Israel. That's why they want to kill them off. They don't want to share nothing with them. They pump sewage, open flood dams.
It's like white phosphorus and all the other crap. Big ups to Chris J too, man. Chris, big ups to you, man, for pointing out the true Holocaust is happening in Palestine, because it takes a real man to stand up and say, look, forget about however million people weren't murdered over 100 years ago. Let's focus on what's happening. Good point in saying that, because this is where these attacks come from, Chris, and Penny. This is where they come from people saying, oh, okay, so I see you're supporting the Palestinian side. I see what you're saying. You see what I mean? That's how distorted this media, multi-ethnic destruction in America. The media was solely created by the state of Israel and is still funded by that through Operation Hollywood. So, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. Yes, I've heard too much stuff. It's just like, when you really look at it, it's just disgusting what's going on in Palestine. I actually know a person who his family's from Palestine, and I heard the kind of crap that goes on in Israel. They literally are pretty much just walled in, like what you heard about the Berlin Wall. That's what they have, all these checkpoints everywhere. It's all militarized. Israel is the definition of fascism. They're just like what Germany did to the Jews is what they're doing to the Palestinian people. And you can't do that. You can't just take revenge for what happened to you, even if I'm sure something did happen. There may not 6 million, but there was a Holocaust in Germany. But then they go do this to another person. They forgot about what happened to them just not that long ago. But they do run our media. That's why that's why it's not even heard about the Palestinian genocide that's going on right now. It's one of those things that just makes me sick to my stomach when I have to hear about this Palestinian genocide that's being done by the Israelis. It's horrible, and it just shows. And then when I see Christians putting up, we are Christians who support Israel, I'm just disgusted, because they must not realize that also Christians are among the Palestinian people that are getting discriminated on and some of them killed.
Has been paid for by the New World Order.
That's right, man. We are the new fucking world order, because all them old philosophies and ideals of taking over countries to create this fictitious empire so we can all slay. You know what, Chris? Really, I'll tell you guys this right now. Anybody out there who wants to, question this with distaste and disgust, and question things with the opportunity to expand your mind. And is what I mean by that is, yeah, you may hear something and it may be false, but a lot of truth lies within the false reality of things that we are subjected to today. But yeah, man, it's a revolving door with these fucking people, dude. It really is. Like you were saying, it's disgusting how people can, especially Israel, a country that's allegedly thrives off of this thing that happened to them in the 1940s that was constructed and created by them, and that's why I try to say that this was constructed by them. It's so important that people understand that, because of what you had mentioned earlier, Chris, about how, and James too, about, how they believe that, these people are certain descendants and that they own this land or they have entitlement. Again, these are all old world philosophies. These are all old world ordered ideals, and it is disgusting because, again, what's even more disgusting is how people can sit there and they can read it. Like I said, I'll admit it. I read a lot of this. I read through these Jewish texts quite a few times. As a matter of fact, after I ripped through that, I went to Christian Judeo text. You know what I mean? So, again, it took me a really long time, even after sitting there reading it, it didn't get in until, another piece of the puzzle came along. Then it's like, okay, I see.
Yeah. And to that is like, we're talking the Christian Judeo pacts, like, that's one of those things that you see a lot in our country, those kind of things, like Republicans with the Christian Republicans with the Jewish people or with Israel and all that stuff. And also, I was going to talk now, shifting gears a little bit, is look at all these lobbying groups they have. Israeli lobby groups probably make up the biggest lobbying groups in America. They pretty much decide, they pretty much run the script of what goes on your Senate and in the House of Representatives. It's no longer the Americans that all run that. It's the Israelis, because they have so much lobbying power and so much money that they can just buy all the votes they need to do whatever they want. And the thing is, and then if they really need to do something, they'll do a false flag or something, and we'll talk about that later, what they've been involved in. But if you've heard about AIPAC, that is probably made, if not the most powerful, one of the most powerful lobbying groups in America, all ran by Israel. And all these lobbying groups, all these lobbying groups by Israel just shows how much money they have. And the thing about it is that it's true also when you read their texts, they really think that they're the chosen ones, and you hear the same stuff like Hitler was talking about master race, and the same kind of words that were in rhetoric is used in their Talmud and stuff. It's exactly the same stuff, master race, we're the chosen ones, the bloodline, and all that stuff. Dude,
right. How the fuck could anybody defend that shit, man? Dude, thank you for pointing that out, because that's what I was trying to get to. How do people support two sides of the paradigm? I know you wanted to get into that left-right paradigm, Chris, and as a matter of fact, that's a good leeway for it right there, because exactly what you were saying about, the AIPAC and all, the Israeli-ran lobbyists, they control a lot of aspects of our government. We outsource things like education, and we outsource things like, just natural things anything from a natural product to, like I said, our future's education. We lobby that to people like Israel and to people like Russia, China, so on and so forth. And allegedly, all these countries we're supposed to be against them. I mean, you ask any average Joe on the street, man, and they'll say, hey, there is a Republican and Democrat. No, dude, I'm sorry. There's an evolution of politics, all right? And anybody who has studied, political evolution in the sense of especially in Germany, anybody can see how that ends up. See what I'm saying? So, with that said, we are already past that. We are in a post-Orwellian society, all right? So, given that fact, and the fact that we do not have a democracy, we have a totalitarian democracy, lends even more credence to the fact that there is no left-right paradigm that is just a facade. It's a sense of false faith, just like the money and financial system of this country. As soon as people stop believing in the dollar, it'll fall the next day. As soon as people stop believing and putting their faith into politicians and start retaining their own responsibilities and applying them to their everyday life, that's when real change will happen.
And until then, talk about it, it's all, our money is completely fake, and that's another thing another way that these top, Zionists and stuff, they also took our money, and here's how. Back in 1910, at the Rockefeller Mansion, many of these Zionists and really elite type of in this world, the really rich billionaires and stuff, met at the Rockefeller, I believe it was the Rockefeller House in 1910, and that's when they decided to make what you now know as the Federal Reserve, which now we just surpassed 100 years of having of that, and now Americans should just be fed up, pardon the pun there, but the Federal Reserve has been printing...
Well, you can't say that, Chris. You can't say that, because then you would be implying that the Jews have a lot of control of a lot of money, and that would just be Jewish now, wouldn't it?
We could go with all the Jew puns all night, but the thing is
you know what? I'm trying to break away from this Zionist bullshit, dude. I'm trying to break away from these false senses of security that these people give to us, all right, and we allow ourselves to perceive it as such. And is what I mean by that is I'm no longer going to decipher from the Zionists, from the Jews, and all other shit, all right? And, there are Jews that probably, don't conform to the Talmud or Torah, but then what? They're non-practicing Jews, so then they're not even Jewish. You see what I'm saying? So, again, the Zionist flag and everything like that, it's all constructed for a reason. And that's why you see Jews on TV, Orthodox Jews, burning flags that say, death to Zion and all this other crap. And it's to cause that separation. So no matter if I'm not racist, I'm going to defend the Jews because I don't want to be called racist, so I'm going to defend the Jews. All right, but I'm not going to support the Zionists. Well, when you do support those, Jews or what have you, just like you said, those the Christian what were they saying? The Christian insurgencies and stuff like the Christian insurgencies are helping them out and all this other crap. And you see what I'm saying? It's for that reason. It's just to confuse and to cause conflict. It really is. It really is, and it really is, man. I can only say so much, man. It's just the basis of it.
But yeah, let's realize that they do have the Zionists and all these top elites that they took control of our money in 1913. The United States didn't always used to be an NWO pup. It slowly got infiltrated from the beginning. At the beginning, there was a few of the people who signed our Declaration of Independence were in all these elite kind of organizations, secret societies and stuff, but it slowly became to where we got completely infiltrated. At the beginning of this country, we were breaking away from the Rothschild crown. That's what was the goal, but really in a way, but now we're just back in their hands. We're right back in the crown's hands. And it's all tied together.
You're absolutely correct. It is tied together. You made a really good connection there. And real quick, before you continue, I'll point something out real quick. I'll let you finish. What you were saying there about how the different types of societies and religions that were kind of brought forth, like around that time or whatever. People need to know that the Declaration of Independence was not signed July 4th, 1776. I'm sorry to disappoint you all, but it's not. July 4th, 1776, or any July 4th of any year for that matter, especially to these people pertaining to that we're speaking about here, the ones who did hold alliances behind closed doors to credence of religion or faith or what have you, they actually celebrated July 4th here in America because it was, I don't know if it was at that point, at this point in time in July, that where northeastern part of America is either closest to the sun or farthest away. But the point is that July 4th, 1776 was a day of, symbolism, as in these people who constructed this society will then, be, I guess, incorporated to the United States of America. It was actually ratified, and the Declaration of Independence was actually ratified 1 year later on August 4th.
Yes, and that's another topic is that some of these people that had these they all had these religious beliefs and stuff about and behind closed doors, and that's what a lot of these secret societies were about. They had all the kind of the sun worshiping and all that kind of stuff, and that was all that was about was July 4th. But going back to another thing that we were talking about, how all these Zionists, the crown, all that's connected, is that we realize that now Israel pretty much, the Zionists, they have the most amount of money, and they use the crown as the financial center. That's where all the money is. You got your Vatican, that's your religious center, and that's the one that's a spiritual center, and then that's another thing that we talk about sometimes, the Truth Seer community, is that they use pretty much spiritual warfare, and but now in Washington, D.C., the Pentagon, that's the military center of the New World Order, and that's their plan. You see, the United States Army nowadays is pretty much just listening to Israel on what to do, go to this place and have a regime change, take out that leader, that then obey to the Rothschild banks, and that's another thing, is that quote, I forgot, it was by Nathaniel Rothschild in the 1820s. I think it was, if you let me control a country's wealth, I don't care who makes the rules. What he pretty much just meant by that was that when he controls your banks, the Rothschild banking system, that's how they're the richest family on earth, and they control all but somewhere between 2 to 5 banks on Earth left are not controlled by them. They control your country. And the countries that will not take the Rothschild banking center, and by the way, Rothschild is a Zionist family, and they ultimately support Zionism. And when they have your country's wealth, they control it. And there's only a few countries that are not controlled by them. And if you don't obey the Rothschild banking system and don't put a Rothschild bank, they'll demonize you. They'll tell you the last few countries are not in it. Iran, North Korea, Syria, Cuba, and the rest are about. I'm just going to say, I think Hungary is supposedly breaking away. They left the IMF recently. Iceland and a few other countries, and that's it. There's no more than 8 countries at the max that are not in the Rothschild banking, and there's only 4 that I know for sure that are not in it right now.
I completely agree with that statement, because one other country that you could have added before a couple of years ago would have been Libya.
Yes.
But you can't add that country anymore because they've added over. Also, I'd like to say, you did say something about like Cuba. Isn't Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, correct?
Yes. Guantanamo Bay
saying?
It's hard to say. Well, I've heard two different things about Cuba. I've heard it fell, and I've heard it's still not non-Rothschild. I'm not sure about Cuba, honestly, but there's a few other. But I know the other countries: Syria, Iran, North Korea. They're for sure. I mean, that's why they want to go to war with Syria and Iran. That's what the rhetoric's been about, and that's why they were trying to. They're worried about going to war with North Korea because they know that would be a very hard war to win for them. So that they're just waiting for their time to the right, to strike that country. But they know that Syria and Iran, they're just waiting for the right opportunity. And that's why they have Iran the deal that they cannot hold up the 6 months and they have to cease all nuclear operations. That's what that's really about. And also the Syria chemical agreement, I think it's the same kind of deal. These agreements, they make the problem and then they create the solution. From all they didn't do the agreement fast enough. And then they'll do the solution. Oh, we must go invade their country. The High Gilligan effect, and that's exactly what.
Well, Chris, that's their credo, and also that's mob mentality. That is mob mentality you just described. Megalomaniac, sociopathic, megalomaniacal type of person. You know what I mean? And it's really crazy because think about it. In 1980, I think it was Reagan, I'm not sure, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but at some point in time we had something called a Nuclear Disarmament Treaty Pact, with the UN and the rest of the world and the rest of the participating countries in this, in which by 2010 we would have to have had sold over 80% of our armed nuclear stockpile. Well, we did this in 2010, and can you take a guess on who the top 3 buyers were on that market?
I know Iran's one of them.
Iran, absolutely correct. North Korea.
North Korea and said 3 countries. So I'm going to have to say.
And China was the 3rd one. But China took a good chunk of. China took about 40% of their nuclear, arsenal that they had purchased off of the Americans. They took that and they actually sold it down to Syria. So there is something really kind of like conflicting going. I know, I see where you're going with the Iran Syria thing, because that is like looking sketchier and sketchier by the minute. But literally, again, this is why the country of Israel was created. Once these countries are taken over, and they will be taken over, and there will be an international banking system implemented in these countries. And I think places like China, even though we say and they say that they tell their own people, and we hear it too from ours, that they are very, China, North Korea, they got beef with each other, they got beef with the U.S. Bullshit. You know what I'm saying? In what world do you sell nuclear weapons? Armed nuclear weapons, which means that all you have to do is load them in a correct computating type material, and it'll launch it. So you can launch that shit from a Scud, and it'll read the computing on the system. So how are these countries that are against each other armed? They're helping each other armies. This is just what we did to create Al-Qaeda. We went to the Taliban and we said, hey, you know the Russians that keep on banging out northeastern Afghanistan for all those poppy fields? We've been funding them. We're the ones who've been giving the Russians that money. You guys want to you guys want to retain this land, you guys want to retain your poppy drugs, you know, that's what their cash flow is, poppy and arms deals. So, you know, what they did is they allowed us foothold in Afghanistan, southern Afghanistan for Iraq and all other crap and other oil fields that we wanted to literally take away from, you know, sovereign nations or what have you, regardless of their war crimes, sovereign nations. We went in there and we took this away. So, you know, with that said, it's really more so of, you know, well, hey, we're arming somebody with weapons, and then the very next minute we're saying, oh, they're our enemies, we got to nuke them. Got to nuke them. They have to be part of our country.
Yes, exactly. And also talking about the whole how we got into Iraq-Afghanistan war the last 12 years and how the populace got behind it. We're going to talk about Israeli involvement in the event that, you know, we justified going to this war about 9/11 and how Mossad was actually involved. Right now, the old media that doesn't say 9/11 was an inside job, like even Russia's media says 9/11 was an inside job, and they're a major country. They're one of the major world powers, and they're saying that it was an inside job. There's pretty much just undeniable proof that it was some kind of black ops done by United States / Mossad and also Saudi intelligence forces. And Mossad was there, and you can actually see photos, many eyewitness accounts, videos even, of these vans that are these people were identified as Mossad later. They're dancing as they're filming the Twin Towers get hit by who knows what. It probably wasn't an actual passenger plane. It was probably a drone or something like that. And they're watching it dance around all happy. And these were Mossad. And Mossad was at 9/11. Many were detained and questioned later. And these were all part of that black op. And the Saudis were in it too. Our government was in it. In fact, I believe we had drills the same day. And people try to say, well, we have drills all the time. Well, why did every major one that's suspected of false flag have drills around it? And there's been so many. Sandy Hook had drills around it. 9/11 and drills around it. A lot of these major events that push some kind of political agenda had drills around it when it comes to these false flags. And 9/11 is the one that's been so busted. So many scientists could tell you that the false flag was inside job, explosives were used, and the things were crashing into the towers. The measurements didn't even match up, really. So there are so many things that were off with it. And the thing is, also, if you look at Israeli quotes about 9/11, you see Netanyahu, I think, said 9/11 was one of the most important events most beneficial events for Israel or something like that, along those lines. And by saying that, he meant that it made his country even more powerful because now he could go tell the United States Army to go do this for them, go into these wars so they could take, you know, I'd say Iraq, Afghanistan were not Rothschild Bank controlled before 2001. And here are the countries that actually got wiped off in the last 12 years. Sudan, Libya, Iraq, and Afghanistan were all turned over and flipped into Rothschild countries. And now this next probably set of wars, Iran and Syria, will be another two more. And that means that we'll only have North Korea and maybe a few other countries, maybe less than 5. And every time that one of those banks gets turned into a Rothschild bank, you're watching Israel and Rothschild and all these Zionists and the whole New World Order just get closer and closer to the New World Order becoming a reality. And once that happens, that nightmare Orwellian fascist society will be all around the world. There'll be no escape from it. It's already started in some countries. It's getting pretty close. I mean, you can see the United States is already a corporate fascist country. And back in the 1940s, it was racial fascism and religious fascism and just normal, and actually in Italy, corporatism that was the fascism nowadays. Now it's a corporate fascism of NATO and many corporations that are causing the New World Order to come together, defense subcontractors, prison industry, and all kinds of giant corporation behemoths that are just taking over and it's getting more and more consolidated into these giant corporate behemoths, all these businesses. Your food industry is becoming smaller and smaller. Just a few companies nowadays. Your media is becoming less and less companies. it's turning. One day it'll just be just a few corporate behemoths controlling the entire world's market, and the Rothschilds will be behind all those world's markets, controlling everything, making all the money.
It's already like that, man. You know, I said the same thing at one point in time. I was like, you know what? You know, this benevolent force is going to end up, running the world after both parts of the stock trade is sold. Well, you know, the person who owned the Nasdaq, I think in early 2000, ended up after, I think it was after 9/11. But regardless of the fact, the person who owned the Nasdaq ended up buying the Dow Jones. So the person who owned the Dow Jones was the Nasdaq, and vice versa. So there's one person who owns both sides of Wall Street. There's one person who owns both sides of this left-right paradigm. And earlier you brought up, earlier you were bringing up Mossad with 9/11. And I'll tell you something right now. When I first heard that shit, I thought it was absolute bunk. I said, dude, first of all, at that point in time, I wasn't really exactly that familiar with Mossad and the operations of which it does. For those who don't know, Mossad is Israeli secret intelligence. That's for anybody who doesn't know. Yes, I know most of you out there are saying, I know what the fuck it is, but we got to tell the people who don't know so they can go and look it up. And you made a very good point with the Israeli state being involved in that. I never would have gave that any thought if it wasn't for I think Dennis sent me a video. I think it was Larry Silverstein or something like that. He was the basically the insurance holder. What's that? Yeah. He owned the World Trade Center buildings. He owned them. He owned all that.
He pulled out insurance right before.
Yes, he did. He did. And you know what's even odder than that? So I did. I investigated it and stuff, thinking this is fucking, this is bullshit. All the investments of insurance funds that were paid out was paid out to the state of Israel. So what I mean by that is, check this out. All right, people in right there in New York City by World Trade Center, there is a harbor in which a lot of ports are, and cargo and other things are actually transferred between that port to the World Trade Center and other various buildings around there. So what happened was, a week prior to this happening, 1 week before 9/11, a drill that went live happened. They stopped J.P. Morgan shipments and other extremely Wells Fargo type of things like that. So other really Merck was another one. So all of these ports that were operational since the 1900s and have not once, not in one day for whatever reason, did not show up for work. 7 days prior to 9/11, everything stopped. And people talk about the 2.3 trillion or what have you. There are other files too. This is why I always said that Building 7 is the smoking gun. Building 7 is the smoking gun for a couple of reasons. One is that you had Barry Jennings' account. He's dead now, but anybody check him out. Barry Jennings, Building 7. He is. I always thought he was. I was like, dude, how could anybody sit there and listen to a survivor, somebody who survived after the fact? 7 years. Most people who died because of 9/11 didn't die that day. Most people who were inflicted of death died after 9/11, which like for instance, they say oh, there was chemical weapons and stuff. I don't know if that's exactly the truth, but I think that there might have been maybe a deviant, more intrusive way of making people feel like that. One of the
going back.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Going to what you were talking about is that's the most odd circumstances that surrounded 9/11 before. And there's eyewitness accounts that there was all kinds of strange workers coming in weeks before. They were probably the ones that were, setting up the controlled demolition. You actually can see photos that show little puffs of smoke coming about 20 floors up above the ground, and you can see, it looks like what you see when an implosion happens. And that's exactly what was going on. And it was a controlled demolition. And World Trade Center 7 explained better is that that's where a lot of financial documents and stuff were held, and there was unaccounted money that they didn't want to pay and stuff, so they demolished that also. And they say that it was caused by structural damage, but there's something look it up on BBC 30 minutes before before World Trade Center 7 collapsed at, I think, 5 o'clock, but this was now 4:30. They get on TV saying World Trade Center 7 has collapsed. But actually when you look, World Trade Center 7 is still standing there, and it was complete. They aired too early. It seems like one of these false flags, I don't know if they do this to creep the hell out of truthers or something like that. People are actually awake while they just have these faults in here, but this happened, and I can't deny it. The building's still standing there, and it's like, how would they know that it's about to collapse when it wasn't even near the two towers? When you actually look at a street map of where World Trade Center 7 was compared, it wasn't really in the actual debris field of the two towers collapsing, and World Trade Center 7 was the smoking gun of 9/11, and they don't even talk about how that third tower fell. It's like 5% actually know that building fell. And go ahead, Brian.
I'll tell you. Yeah. You know, I agree a lot, but there is a couple things I wanted to tweak out. There was, you know, the Building 7, I believe, is the smoking gun for two reasons. One, I believe that was one of two buildings that were the only ones to have had used controlled demolitions on. All right, and this is not the only conspiracy here, people. The only conspiracy here, folks, is the conspiracy of the crime to commit genocide of Americans and spill blood on American soil. And this was done, you know, through the help of Larry Silverstein and these other people. So that's the real conspiracy, is these people, Larry Silverstein, Israeli, and, you know, the Bush administration conspiring with each other to carry this out. Again, Barry Jennings, he was an EOD, Explosive Ordnance Division expert. He was in the military for, I think, you know, from 1988 to 1999, something like that. So he was in Housing and Urban Development, the HUD department, because Building 7 is where the HUD, Housing and Urban Development, was. And it's kind of funny that we're talking about that because our friend Stu Webb there was a federal whistleblower on the HUD scandals back in the early 90s, late 80s. And so basically my point in this is saying that the towers 1 and 2, they fell when they had, you know, people like to talk about the free fall thing and all other crap. Well, the reason why it appears the way it does, and the reason why people explain it in that manner, is because the first, and I think we went over this, I don't know if it was, I think it was impending or whatever, but we went over this the other night. I was saying that if you look at a certain angle above the building, okay, there is no debris. It was completely disintegrated. By the time the top of the building got down to the lower middle part of the building, there was no upper part of the building. You see what I'm saying? So, and that's another thing, is that, you know, what they say, it was like a 60-foot fucking hole? How the fuck do you get a 60-foot hole in, you know, from a building collapsing? Even demolition, you know, designated demos don't even, you know, go 5 feet, 6 feet into the ground. Where do they get this shit from?
Exactly. And what happened there is that it was that whole controlled demolition. We know that's an inside job, and one of the major forces that made it happen was the Mossad and Israelis. In fact, actually, when polled, it's actually not that unknown of a fact that when I actually think it was like 20% of Americans actually during a poll said that they believed 9/11 could have been an inside job, and also by the United States government, and also like 10 believed that Mossad could have been involved. The thing is, it's a part of two. The United States, Mossad, and Saudi Arabia were all involved because they all wanted that war to happen over there in the Middle East, where they would have, number one, be able to install Rothschild banks into those countries, and number two, to change their government to a puppet government, into a so-called democracy, even though it's a totalitarian democracy, and number three, steal their oil. And go ahead, Brandon.
Oh, hey, no, actually, I was yelling at somebody else. Oh,
hey,
yeah,
Brandon, before you get into it, Brandon and Chris, we do have a caller. If you guys want to get to that caller, it's actually another host here on the network. Put his hand up, so whenever you're ready, just let me know. We'll get him in.
Okay, you can bring the caller in.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sound good, Brandon?
Yeah, bring in the caller, dude. Yeah, I forgot. I don't know what the hell I was going to say. Oh, yeah, I remember now. Whatchamacallit? Listen, we've talked about this before. Chris, you lend a lot of validity into what I'm about to say. Because, other countries, all right, after when World War II happened, we came in and we hosted the World's Tribunal Courts in, Nazi Germany, Nuremberg or whatever. So basically what happened is, the transference of power with that. But I want everybody to know right now, anybody can go and look this up. George Bush and his administration has been prosecuted twice, all right, by two different countries, Japan, and I think it was Malaysia was the other one. I was just reading this earlier, as he was just tried and convicted, I think, over the past year, in Malaysia. And the thing is that, what the fuck does Malaysia matter? They hosted a world court, just like we did in Nazi Germany. People still, I could repeat this and repeat this and repeat this, and people will still not see the connection. They still will not see the transference of power from, Nuremberg to Nuremberg 2. You know what I mean?
Exactly what's that is that, actually, it's not just George Bush. Barack Obama and other have also been tried for war crimes, too. And they both have been tried. George Bush has been tried twice.
Was Obama tried? When they tried him, did they find him guilty? Because they were trying to prosecute.
I think he's been found guilty. I think they both have been found guilty of war crimes.
Good, they fucking should.
Tell me if
they're fucking scumbags. And people who vote for them are even worse.
Yeah, that's why that's why people who, especially if you know us and you still are voting Democrat or Republican, you have really just, none of this has sunk down to you. They are both controlled by AIPAC and other Israeli lobby, and that's what the whole Washington D.C. is controlled by. We are. The truth is that the entire thing is scripted by design.
Hey, fucking man, it is by design, man, and everything that everybody who's listening here just heard, you heard that from somebody who is most likely probably 10 years older than you. So you people out there who are 30, 40 years old and want to sit here and say this, that, or the other, don't take my word for it. Don't take a 15-year-old's word for it. Dude, you're a real fucking man. It don't matter how old you are. You're a real man. Your information is by far accurate. It's beyond accurate. It's eerily close to my mindset when I was, in that realm of 15 and 16 there. And dude, it takes so much, especially in today, dude. The heat I would get in school for standing up, man, I don't understand, like, how you haven't got kicked out, because I know you speak out a lot, too, as you should. Any American who remains quiet is complacent. Treason. You are, going under.
You are aiding the treason
by government. Exactly. I couldn't have said it better. Exactly right. Aiding and abetting.
If you are just sitting there and doing nothing, you're just watching. I mean, imagine if you were. If you had a gun in your hand and there was a murder going on or something, some guy was about to murder some woman, and you just sat there and was like, oh, I don't care, you would probably be charged for something, and you would definitely be blamed. And that's exactly what's going on now. When people, in the future, all this falls apart and hopefully may the people restore power and something miraculous happens, they're going to look back in history. The people who just sat there and watched and knew what was going on but didn't do anything, didn't speak out, are going to be looked upon almost as badly as the leaders. And that's what I'm telling you. That's your place in history. And there's people that will know the truth and yet still are participating in the game. And that's the problem. It's just a game. That's what our politics is. It's a paradigm set by these Zionists and stuff. They run the script, and then you vote for one way you're fucked, another way you're fucked. And that's how it runs. And also, talking about people don't even believe me at school. It's like it's like trying to talk to a wall when you try to talk to them. They're like, oh no, we're still a democracy. Oh, we're standing up for the good thing. It's not fascist at all. It's all conspiracy theories. And we need gun control because there's all these mass murders going on. And I'm like, please, well, you're just drinking they're just drinking the mainstream media Kool-Aid there. Like, this is what these kids literally, that they even know anything, they're drinking the mainstream media Kool-Aid. I've only met a couple people that even think like me, and it's great to see them, and I see a few of them, and there's actually a few in our group that are my age, and it's very good to see that there's some, but there's that mass majority, like these kids are getting pretty much in the new version of Hitler's youth, the ROTC, and they have the same kind of thing. They do the pledges. We stand for freedom and justice around the world, and they do their pledge or whatever. It's the same indoctrination. Yeah, and they do that. That's what the ROTC is all about. They just indoctrinate kids into thinking the Army is doing the right around the world, and then when they actually go to the Army, they find out what's going on, and then they're all shocked. And that's what they're.
Well, they dress it up. They dress it up like it's a beautiful package, and I've got I know kids that are in the ROTC. It's a Sean, by the way. I know kids that are in the ROTC, and they dress it up like it's this beautiful wrapped up package. You can get these benefits. You can do this. They've made going to a university almost impossible now with this debt. $40,000 for 1 year, whatever the case may be. So if you want to be, per se, a lawyer, doctor, any part of these, any of these major jobs out there, and you want to go to school for it, unless you're already in the rich class, that ain't going to happen unless you go in the military. You go in the military and they will hook you up, but that's what they tell you. But what they don't tell you is once you sign that dotted line, they own you. Okay? That's something we need to realize there. Yeah, you're exactly right, Chris. That's what the ROTC program is Hitler Youth program. That's what it is.
Yes, true. Exactly. It's the exact same thing. And one of the major signs of a fascist country, when you look at any type of politics, any person that studies political science, and will tell you that one of the things is militarization of a country where everybody became militarized. And that's what a lot of stuff has shown the militarization of this country. And that's one. And one thing is, it's not. It used to be kind of a small thing in schools. I know ROTC has been around. My dad talked about it, but it would be like 30 kids maybe in the high school. In my school, there's 1,500 kids total, and over 300 kids are in the ROTC program. It's like in some of my classes, I'm one of the few that's not in the ROTC. It's literally like I'm just looking around. I'm like, well, a nice time with your indoctrination over there. I'm just gonna, actually be awake and be aware of what's going on. And I don't even. It's some of these people. It's like talking to a brick wall about, and they'll never believe what's really going on. But you know what? Everyone's gonna have to. It's like you wake up the easy way now, or you wake up the hard way later. The hard way later is when this actually all happens, and then all of a sudden we're in martial law and all that stuff. And then I'm just going to be sitting there like, well, I warned you. But you know what? I'm not even. I hope I'm somewhere out in the country or something where I don't really have to deal with it too much. Not in the urban area. Hopefully somewhere I can get away from it. But it's going to be a big part of this. And also realize it's not going to be all Army that's going to be locking us down. It's actually going to be United Nations, NATO that's going to be doing it. And as they always do, they're going to put some little name on it. They're going to be called some kind of mission, or when the gun collection has to happen for them, they're going to say that. And also, here's another thing. I hear people that I put all the stuff about Hillary Clinton, what she really believes, that we need all guns taken away, and she's even said we have to obey all United Nations treaties, and one of the United Nations treaties is saying that we cannot have small arms, which pretty much would take away most guns. And people are still, even after I put that kind of stuff, they're like, I'll vote for Hillary Clinton. And people are still, when I tell them, and they still fall for the left-right paradigm, thinking there's going to be change, it's terrible. But I don't know. I don't know if you've had these people, but it's just like talking to a brick wall. It's like that you say words at them, they bounce right back at you, and it's like they didn't even hear them.
Right. Well, they're trained to shut that stuff out through units like the ADL and Southern Poverty Law Center and NAACP, and all that. They love to categorize everything to a stereotype. They spend a lot of money over the years making the words conspiracy theory sound evil. And as soon as they hit you with that label, they're shutting you out. Every word that is said, you might as well be talking to yourself, because you are. They're not listening to you. I've seen it time and time again in what I try to do in my life. When you're facing somebody, when you're staring at somebody face to face and you're trying to give them this information, you'll hear the words, "Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist." Oh, no, I'm not. Just don't put a label on me, because when they do put that label on you, if you say, "Yeah, I am," then that's it. They're not listening to another word you say. So, It's a hard road to hoe.
Exactly. I don't even use that word conspiracy theory to describe myself. It's truth theory. Because we just bring the facts out. We show what really goes on by documented facts, sometimes by what the own governments are trying to cover up, spilled out on themselves, and words that they said about New World Order, like Henry Kissinger and others, and also other top elite figures, George Bush Sr., George Bush, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, all these, and other facts that they put out and stuff like that. I mean, you can just, there's so many that, and the conspiracy theorists, well, let me remind you, it was made by Richard Nixon, who was the one that actually kind of coined that term, and look what he was responsible. He did Watergate.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
That's exactly what
man is still.
It's a word to discredit anybody who's actually awake, and spreading it is like, oh, nope, just conspiracy theories, don't listen to them. But just go ahead and listen to every word that your TV says to you. And it's like, that's another thing, like they have this idea that they pretty much tell people, oh, you can't believe everything you see on the internet, but you can totally believe everything you see on the TV, even though that you're never going to get one word of truth practically from the TV. Like you just, on the internet, you can, today with this whole age of information you can find on the internet, if you don't find out the truth, it's because you're not interested and you're just from just turning a blind eye at this point.
Right.
And also, but realize that all the media you see on the TV, they're all ran by a few people. And let me remind you some of the kind of people that run our news. Defensive subcontractors, General Electric, giant corporate behemoths they are. Saudi Prince owns the second biggest share class. That's a fact. And we were talking about how they were in part of the 9/11 conspiracy with Saudi intelligence, and they were also part of this was actually documented by major governments and stuff, including the Russian government, is that they found out that whole Syrian chemical attack by the rebels was actually a Saudi black op, and all those films that you saw, that was a Saudi black op also. And so you have these people that they are the conspiracy. They're conspiratizing to start war. That's what they are doing.
Right.
The conspiracy they're doing, we're just telling about the conspiracies they're doing. We're not in a conspiracy, they are, and we're exposing it.
And it goes back to what Brandon was talking about earlier. He's like, don't label us as a hate group. And this show's not a hate show per se. But okay, so if you want to throw the race card out there, you're attacking one race. Well, okay, look at it. We would be talking about Mexicans if the Mexicans was in the conspiracy, but they're not. There's no proof. You show me proof, we'll talk about the Mexicans. There's no Chinese conspiracy. Show me the proof.
Fast and Furious.
They're not in there.
Fast and Furious.
Right. The reason that we're talking about the Jewish community tonight is because their names are all involved in it, Al Sharon.
The reason why we're talking about the Jewish community is because Israel, that state, is the one who literally owns and controls the lobbyists of our government. People who support your, the representative, his constituents, so on and so forth, is not represented by a person, as Mitt Romney made it perfectly clear during his election, that people are corporations, and this is exactly how they perceive us. And that is, I'm glad you brought that up, man, because that is, again, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a good point to decipher. Anybody. And, I can't really get mad at anybody who is sitting there listening to the show for the first time or fifth time, what have you, and may not know us on a personal level. When anybody goes on to, sitting there listening to a radio show, and they sit there and they hear somebody saying, Jew this, Jew that, it's the same thing as saying, nigger this, nigger that, in their eyes. You see what I'm saying? And that is because of that delusion, that media, multi-ethnic destruction in America. It's called media for a reason, because they want racial and class warfare to be, in abundance. And they want, in other words, the revolution will not be televised. It will be a constructed one. And it will be a constructed one to people like, Alex Jones and all these others. There's so many brilliant people, man, like, I was reading a couple. I cannot believe these people that went on his show, and That's the thing. I was reading a book the other day about, man, I forget his name. I'll post the name up in the book in a minute here. But basically, is what it was how the government controls the amount of information that is put out there into the American public, and what we are allowed to perceive and interpret as being reality. For instance, and a good example of this is something that I've shared quite a few times. If you look at Time Magazine, there's a rather popular one I went over, and it was it was like Prozac Nation or Prescription Nation. That's what it was. It was Prescription Nation. So Time Magazine goes out to 80 countries all over the world. It's distributed all over the flipping place, so you can be on just about any continent and grab one. A physical copy of it. And if you look at the of that month, you can, not only that month, any month. So, for instance, example, next month you guys are bored. Sit there and look at what's on our Time Magazine and what's on the rest of the world. For instance, they were pushing in that magazine. They were pushing it. Basically, hey, it's okay to use pharmaceuticals. And then the very next year, they revised the DSM-4 with the DSM-5. Making that assumption a belief. Now, if you looked at Mexico in South America, if you looked at their Time Magazine that was released on the same day, it was something completely different. It pertained more towards, it didn't pertain to anything that we would see or hear here in America, and that's what I'm saying, that this revolution will be a constructed one. I'm not here to revolt. I'm not here to make change on a worldwide scale, because that's not going to happen. A change will happen by individual basis. The thing is that the government is the way it is because we've sat back and we've allowed places like Russia and Israel and a whole bunch of other places, not to single out Israel, but a whole bunch of other countries, allowed them to come in here and whore out our government, whore out lobbyists, whore out, education, food programs, health programs, prescription programs. I could go on and on. So, really the question isn't what countries are doing what to America. It's more so, where is America?
Yeah, and going back to
the Americans. Where's the Americans? Where are these patriotic, flag-flying motherfuckers that were around on 9/11? America, God is great, America rules, yeah, man, kick those terrorists ass. Where are those people now? Because, bring this, why they won't bring the military home? They won't bring the military home. They won't bring it back in full forcefully for one of two reasons, I assume. Reason number one is that they won't bring the military back because they know if something ever does happen, that we most likely. Hey man, at least the people that I know in the military, they wouldn't sit there and take that shit. They would, they would violently revolt. So it could be for that reason. It could be to one day bring the government back and have bring the troops back and have a constructed revolt, a violent one, and or 3, you have that revolt outsourced, in which it is done now. This is how we interpret information. Like I said, I think our radio shows are the only radio shows that we put out there. And if you have, something to question about, and in other words, if you are serious about attaining real knowledge, you can always come to any of us after the show and be like, can you? And even, if you're just sitting there listening, you want to say, man, what's the deal with? Do so respectfully and with the intent to understand, but don't understand it from our perspective. Hear what we say and go out and find it for yourself. It will not happen overnight.
Yeah. Right. And information's out there. You just got to find it. Exactly. And then there's people that, this is how they are. That's like, no, I'll only believe whatever the mainstream media pretty much tells me. And those kind of people. And that's a majority of America. And they won't even try to find the truth. And the truth is all over the internet. And the thing is, the thing about that is that they're just putting a blind eye to the actual truth because it's too ugly for them. It's like the whole quote, you can't handle the truth. For some people, it's too ugly. And it's for them, I guess. I don't know.
Well, yeah, excellent. But, we got to understand, one of the most ancient books out there, The Art of War. A lot of people, even in the patriotic community, haven't read that book, but they have. And one of the best quotes out of that book is, war is not won on the battlefield with bloodshed. It's won by deception. And that's exactly what they do.
They deceive us. I mean, if you think about it, if you just really sit back and, logically think about it, put your hate and all that crap and all the racism and the divide and everything to the side and just really look at this thing. Who's benefiting? Okay? Who are they turning against each other? They're turning the Arabic communities against the Christians. And in the meantime, who's sitting back and reaping all the benefits? The state of Israel.
Yeah, that's what I'm not talking about. Yeah, I'm not talking about the, just walking around everyday average, Joe Blow Jewish people. I'm talking about the leaders of this state, the people who rule, the people who control things, like Brandon was talking about with AIPAC and the ADL, and the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission. They're all involved in all of these groups, and these groups, like he said, they're lobbying. They're running our government. Look what Al Sharon said in 2001. He ain't worried about anything Congress says about what America's going to do and what America's not going to do, because he's running it. So, I mean, and going back to that, it's like we were talking about. We're not talking about the average day, just regular Jew. But we're talking about, we're talking about the leaders. That's who we're talking about when we talk about Zionists. They're the people that control the money, the Rothschilds, all those other giant families, and all the 13 bloodlines. A couple are not Jewish, a few are others, like the Lee family and stuff like that. But there's quite a few Jewish families, and the problem is, it's almost like, I feel like with some people, it's like you talk about the Rothschilds, it's like, nope, you're anti-Semitic just because they're a Jewish family. I'm like, what? I can't even talk about them in a bad way.
Right off the bat, they keep their ad hominem attacks to their damn self. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's exactly how they are. It's like, nope, they're Jews. You can't talk about them in a bad way. Nope. And then it's like, come on. You're pretty much, so if it was any other type of family, we could talk about it. So now you're saying you're superior because you guys are Jews and we can't talk about it. So now you're being the racist, actually. So, yeah, you kind of contradicted yourself in your own statements there. And that's exactly what I feel with these people. It's just that they don't want to talk about it. And the thing is that people like the Rothschild family and stuff, they're the ones who run the world.
Right.
Chris, dude, there's actually, what you just explained, there's actually a word for it. Okay? There's an actual word for what you just had explained. Could you? And, Payday Monsanto uses it a few times in his song, Chavez Goy, which actually, transfers, into one who is, a non-Jew, okay? So, like you were saying, somebody that you're sitting there, you're just having a conversation with somebody just jumps in and says, oh, you're fucking racist. Well, this is what the Jews themselves would refer to that person as being Chavez Goy, or basically a Goy, which is, somebody who is not a Jew, or they're a Thilo Jew, basically spouting Jewish rhetoric and, being able to put all of your morals and philosophies that you have, they set these aside. And they do this literally to increase that amount of tension between, is it race, is it about race, or is there really some sort of conspiratorial crime going on here? There is. Look up, CIA Red Cell. Look up, Alexis Goldstein. Look up, there's, what was it, Snowden, man. We talked about this a couple nights ago, and it was so weird that Stu Webb came on and was like, hey, man, he's a really messiah, because a couple things caught my eyes. Specifically, it was on RT News there. I know, Chris, you watched this as well, so you might even have seen this. All of Snowden's work, and this is how I recognized there was a problem here, is because I took the time to go and look at all of the material that Snowden put out. First of all, everybody needs to know that Snowden never released any material at all by himself. He actually relinquished this material to somebody named Barton Gellman, who works for the Washington Post, okay? And Edward Snowden, whatever, when he was when they wanted him in a Senate Congress hearing, all right, the NSA showed up, and Snowden was later asked about this, and he said yes, but the NSA showed up in, for Snowden and said, look, this is an ongoing operation. This government needs to stop, this Congress needs to stop interfering with our operation. and are operatives. Meaning, and they even asked them, they say, so you are claiming that this is still your subject? Because anytime you go into any three-letter agency, whether it be CPS or the NSA or the CIA, you literally forfeit your natural rights. Any type of right that you think that you have, you no longer have. You literally have to sign a consent. They can do whatever the hell they want with you, man. It's insane. But, people should look that up, that, Snowden is this, whether it's a, cooperation of intelligence program, COINTEL type thing, or whether it's an exclusive Israeli Mossad deal or pact between the NSA and some of its agent provocateurs. And this is, again, what I mean by a controlled revolution. Look how many people stood up and said, let's hang, fuck it, hang them. We need our intelligence. You can't sit there and say that no other country in the world isn't out to get us. No, I'm not sitting there saying that there aren't lone nuts out there. I'm not saying that there ain't crazy people out there, because there are. You know what I mean? And these crazy people eventually end up, running empires. So, sure, yeah, we may be in cahoots with these people. I'm not going to discredit the fact that there's a chance that they could drop a bomb on us, because they tried before. But my point is that the constructive revolution, and the constructive revolution, is happening right now. It's been happening. You see things like, Occupy Wall Street. Again, no disrespect to other Occupy members, because we've had a lot of them on the show as well, especially in Portland. But the first faction of those gatherings in New York City that were held was actually funded through the Koch brothers. I mean, need I say more?
Yeah. Exactly. And the thing is, it seems like whenever they have these kind of whenever there's some kind of revolution, it seems like they always hijack at that point. Like, let's take what happened in Egypt, not the most recent one, but the one back when Morsi eventually came to power. They took out their old guy, Mubarak, and then they when they knew that the revolution was going to win, they knew, okay, how about we'll just put a U.S. puppet in there that will be working for us, and that's what they did. They put Morsi in there, which their Muslim Brotherhood is a fake. It's one of the theocratic imposters, just like Zionism or Richard or the Knights back in the 1300s. They're fakes. They use religion in order to justify horrific stuff, like the Muslim Brotherhood, or, justifying Islamic, extremism and terrorism and stuff like that in the name of religion there. And that's one that the United States openly supported and gave all. It was like, we got to give all our support to the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, and just like with Zionism and all that stuff. And there's actually a picture that shows like the words that they said. Those three top people of the Crusade, one of the leaders of the Crusade, the Christian, the theocratic imposter, the Muslim one, and the Jewish one, all using religion in order to justify these things that ultimately helps out the House of Rothschild and that kind of stuff. And they hijack these movements and stuff. They put in their guys, and then so in the long run they end up with the same person practically. There's been very few that have actually been able to not have these Rothschilds in place. I don't know. There's a few countries. Let me remind you, there's a few countries that are holding it back. We're only by one of a few countries. A place with Rothschild banks in the whole world is under one banking system. The Rothschilds have won, the elite have won, and it's over. We're under a new world order, and I don't even know how we will escape that if that happens. That would be something miraculous at that point. That's why I say we need to stand up now before that happens, because that's less than 30 years away, I would say, before all the wars are over, and that's why I think there's going to be some major clashes happening. So they're going to try to take some of these last countries, and that'll be it. And actually, if you look at them, of course, we were talking about how the Pentagon and Washington is the military capital of the New World Order. You see these generals and stuff, they were saying exactly in quotes about what they were going to do. They said, we're going to take 5 countries in the next 5 years, and 3 of them they took was the creepy thing. And the only 2 that they didn't take were Syria and Iran, and guess what? We've been talking about going to war with those 2 countries since 2012, and that kind of stuff. And honestly, it's hard to say what's going to happen with all that, but you can tell, and there's probably going to be there could be a revolution in the United States, but I think they'll hijack it, and they'll justify martial law with it by that revolution that happens in the United States. They'll hijack the top leaders of it. They'll put their guys in it, and then they'll be able to justify. They'll squash it when it happens like that, and then they'll be able to justify. Okay, time for martial law. and then that's exactly how it happened. You saw the changes happening, and then really it was more of the same and got even worse. And not saying that all revolutions are bad, but I'm just saying that that's a big concern if a country was to have one, is that don't let the wrong people hijack it, and that's what's gonna.
That's why in Snowden. The thing is that, Snowden did the big thing, letting the Americans spy on, but honestly, it just scared the crap out of Americans. That's how fascism works. It's fear of the people. It's the same crap and back in Germany, people were not willing to talk because they were like, oh shit, the Gestapo will come to our house and they'll try to kill us if we talk about that in public. And it's like the same thing. That's how they're going to have us scared with the Department of Homeland Security in the future. The DHS is like the new Gestapo. The NSA is your intelligence force. Get civilian gathering intelligence. Then you have your foreign one, the CIA. You have all these alpha agencies, these three-letter agencies that go on, all with different purposes. EPA do fulfill Agenda 21 kind of stuff, saying, okay, you can't go in this zone because we have to save it for the animals, and eventually we'll have the rural areas controlled. And we haven't really talked a bunch about that, but that's the kind of stuff all these design that's also orchestrated with Agenda 21 and that kind of stuff, sustainability, but it's not what you think of sustainability. It's not sustaining the world. It's more like depopulation.
Sustainability on their behalf.
Yeah, how they can
keep themselves.
Yeah, that's exactly what Agenda 21 is, and and that's another thing. But also,
I was going to say, Chris, you want to finish your thought there, and then I was wondering if we could probably possibly take a break real quick, get some other callers in here or something.
Yeah, I was thinking we'll take a break, and then we're going to get some callers in this last half hour of the show. But yeah, that's exactly the whole thing is that there's so many organizations that start to get all confusing, but we realize they're almost all tied together. When you go from stuff from Muslim Brotherhood, the United Nations, to everything like that, the CPR, the Federal Reserve, and all these Mossad, and all these, they're all tied together, and realize that there's only a few people that control all these giant organizations. All these corporations are controlled by 13 families. And actually, if someone has a list of them, I'd like for them to say it. We were talking about, actually, the last thing we were talking about were the 13 ruling families of the New World Order. And we were talking about how it can get real confusing, yes. All these different groups and all these, there's thousands, literally, of groups that they control, and all these corporations and everything. But remember, it's all bunched up into these 13 families and of these, Zionists that rule, and these people that rule the New World Order, and eventually, if they get their way with these last countries that are not ran by the Rothschild banking system, they will be controlled. They will rule the world. They rule most of the world now, and there's only a few countries left that are not ruled by them, and they will do whatever it takes, war, to make themselves the rulers of the world. And right now, it's time to stand up. And we were also talking about how revolutions often get hijacked, though, by them, and then they end up displacing their guy, like what happened in Egypt. They replaced one tyrant with another tyrant. They replaced Mubarak with Morsi, and now we're in, again, another transition stage there. I've heard two different things about what really happened there. I think it possibly was a third case now. Another tyrant probably will come in again in Egypt over there. But that's what happens, is that in a lot of these revolutions, very few have actually passed through and not, had some other tyrant or ran by them, control afterwards the situation in the country. But examples of that was my best example I could think of, and that was recent, was the one in Egypt. And I could probably think of some other ones, probably. And some other ones that happened was, when they had them in Russia or something, is that I don't know honestly so I've heard two different things, is that they were controlled by the Rothschilds the whole time. I've heard that they were controlled at certain times, and I think possibly they might have not been controlled until Gorbachev came in. But all they did was replace their old system, and then they put in their, what they call a democracy, and that's what they always do under the guise of democracy. But it's not democracy. Democracy, it is democracy, and the illusion that you think of what democracy is is not democracy. It's not the people ruling. It's the minority controlling the majority. But it's even worse. It starts to go into totalitarian democracy and eventually just a dictatorship. Like here in the United States, it's all an illusion. Everything's ran by these 13 families. They run the script. The whole Washington and all these, debt ceiling crap. It's all imaginary. This is the playing with imaginary money made by the Federal Reserve that's not even real. That it's not backed by gold. It hasn't been backed by gold in a long time. And we haven't been printing our own money since before 1913. I say it this way. Like I said on December 23rd, the 100th anniversary of the Federal Reserve, also, I said, grew up in the United States of America, July 4th, well, I found out it's not really that the date, but July 4th, 1776 to December 23rd, 1913. Because when that happened, we pretty much sold our sovereignty completely to internationalist bankers. And we were talking about this on the last show with the guy we were interviewing, Andrew Wiley, and how, I don't know, if that guy really does what he says he's going to do, he would actually give the people an alternative to having to, use these international bankers pretty much just play money and actually be able to use other stuff as a medium in exchange. And if anybody has something to contribute to that, please say so.
Well, I was going back to, if I could have about 5 minutes here, I want to give a brief little rundown of the Jewish people according to the Canaan as far as their history. And we got to understand, after King Nebuchadnezzar conquered Judah in 6th century BC, the Jews went to Babylon. Well, they were trying to figure out how could one be a true Jew in a distant, hostile environment. So they turned to this class of the scribes to interpret the law and make it workable. The New Testament calls the scribes and Pharisees the greatest legal authority of all ages. All right, before I go any further, we need to understand that, all these different books, when it's talking about the pharaohs, that it just quit talking about them. All these different religious books, they just quit talking about them. Well, that didn't mean they disappeared. It didn't mean they were conquered. They just, went undercover. Well, this kind of happened, with the Jewish leaders as well. And so, you understand that there were two authorities to the Jews. One was the law of Moses, and the other was the oral law acquired by the 70 elders. All right. Well, Jesus in his 4 books of his earthly ministry, he denounced the Pharisees and Sadducees quite adamantly, called them hypocrites. He told them that they made the law of none effect through their traditions and things of that nature countless times throughout those 4 books. Okay? Well, in 70 AD, Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans. Through this, the Pharisees emerged with greater power over the Jewish people. And the Encyclopedia Judaica actually explains this. With the destruction of the temple, the Sadducees disappeared altogether, leaving the regulations of all Jewish affairs in the hands of the Pharisees to dictate the Jewish people. The whole history of Judaism was reconstructed. From the Pharisees' point of view, Pharisees shaped the character of Judaism and the life and thought of the Jews for the future. This is actually out of the Jewish Encyclopedia. All right, in 135 AD, all Jews were expelled from Palestine. They fled to Babylon. For 1,000 years, Judaism flourished under the leadership of the Pharisees. And through the Pharisees, these books were written, the Talmud, the Kabbalah, and the Zohar. And the Kabbalah taught the Jews were meant to rule the world, like Brandon explained earlier. I've studied this as well, and I've actually done a sermon at my dad's Bible class on this very topic. These people hadn't disappeared. They've just evolved over the years, behind the curtains. It's important for people to understand that, this didn't just happen in the last 30, 40 years. I've heard that before, and I'm like, if you really believe that, you hadn't done your homework. Because, while recent history is more available to us, because they didn't have a chance to erase it all, the older history, they had an easier chance of erasing it all. So you really got to do some digging and do your homework. And a lot of people fell short in that aspect. So that's why when you talk about, this Zionist, these 13 families that you're talking about now, Chris, a lot of people can't wrap their head around it because they haven't really done their homework. It's important for people to do their own research to actually get to come under the understanding of what's really going on in the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to elaborate on that.
Exactly what you're talking about. This has happened in the last 34 years. That's exactly the point, is that this has been going on for a long, long time. It's like many people said, Brandon said, it shouldn't be called the New World Order. It's really more like the Old World Order. The only thing new that's going to happen in the future is that they're going to actually control the entire world. That's the only thing new that's going to happen. That's the same organization's been around for thousands, possibly up to, some people say 6,000 years. These bloodlines going back to Egypt and stuff. And also, you were talking about how they flourished under Babylon and stuff like that. That's how long. And they wrote these new books, the Talmud and the Kabbalah, these books that really, that really show, this whole stuff. Like they're pretty much their mind compass of the Jewish people, saying that they're the chosen ones in the master race. That's what it pretty much was. Yeah. So that's exactly what these books were that they wrote, and then they pretty much set themselves in a position where they would eventually, one day their goal was world conquest. And it's like the same kind of crap. Really, when you look at it, the Nazis and their Aryan, their whole Aryan race, and then the Zionists and their whole Jewish superiority race, it's like the same kind of crap. It's this one master race that they believe that they are, and that everyone else is inferior, trying to do world conquest, and that was both their goals. And the truth is that, the Jews and the Zionists, they funded Hitler, those bankers, and brought him up and propped him up, so that could happen. So the Holocaust could happen, and then they could use that, get the sympathy of the world, and then they could create the state of Israel, which had been their goal forever. And now they pretty much make prophecy happen. That's what they want. That's what the Israelis and the Zionists are doing. And I guess I'm going to keep trying to say something. That's my point there.
And on the note that when you consider the fact that most of America is mainly Christian based, and I'm not trying to turn it into a religious thing here, but it's important to understand this. They have infiltrated your churches as well. And they're pushing this Zionist agenda in your churches. They're teaching you've got to love Israel. You've got to back them at all costs. I mean, they've got Zionist preachers like John Hagee on TV telling you need to do a preemptive nuclear strike on a country so that they don't do one on Israel. That's insanity. That's just insanity. Killing millions of people in the name of God? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll
tell you one thing, that's definitely not what, if you actually read the Bible, that's not what it talked about. It did not talk about killing millions of people just so we can defend Israel. I mean, I've heard this crap.
That's right.
It's disgusting. This is literally the stuff that makes me sick to my stomach when I see these people, the Christians saying, we support Israel. We must not abandon Israel, and that kind of crap. This is the crap, and I see it all the time. But especially down here in Florida, I guess there's a lot of Jewish people, I guess, but you see it, and a lot of people who are friends with them, and you see them putting this kind of stuff, and it's a big Republican base down here, but it doesn't matter because the Democrats say the same crap. It's all Washington's conscripted by them. So if you're Christian and you support Israel, you must not realize that they absolutely oppress Christians too. And that's one of the major groups that's oppressed. The only people who are not oppressed in Israel are Jewish Israelis. And it's racial superiority causing genocide there.
What you were talking about just minutes ago,
Israel and Nazi Germany, when it comes to their ideology. Only thing different is the numbers.
Right.
Well, what you was talking about earlier with the setting up of the State of Israel, people just need to really think about it. Look at all of the wars and the police actions that the U.S. military has been involved in since World War II, since the founding of the State of Israel. And each and every one of them almost is on the behalf of Israel. Most of them, the majority of them, around 70, 80% of these police actions or wars have been in the Middle East against the surrounding countries around Israel. They're expanding their borders is what they're doing. It's genocide.
Exactly. They're doing all these actions in behalf of Israel pretty much. And that's the thing. Mm-hmm. I hate to say it, but America and the United States and their military has turned into, they're pretty much just Israel's bitch. They're Israel and the Zionists who control the New World Order, and when you look at the Zionists, all these 13 families that control it, they have the United States as your military capital. That's all I got to say there. I won't go to the other two, and that's what they use, the United States military to defend the state of Israel. And just because a couple of countries in the Middle East disagree with the state of Israel because they know what it's really about and the kind of crap that's going on to the Palestinian people, and all that, there's Iran and Syria that haven't accepted the Rothschild banks because they know what they'll mean. I mean, they'll sell their sovereignty to the people that they've pretty much said that they don't like for a long time. And of course, there's a good reason for them not liking them. That the Rothschild and the Zionist plan is to rule the world and rule the world under a fascist Orwellian state. In that where the elite will have only power and the people are absolutely powerless, and they'll be the labor force, and that's it. They'll just be cattle practically. In fact, isn't that what the word Goy means? One of the words they use for us is means cattle. That's exactly what they think of us. Again, I want people to realize there is it doesn't matter what race you are. If you're preaching that your race is superior than another, you're preaching the same kind of crap Hitler did. You're preaching racial discrimination. I don't care if you're black, Hispanic, Jewish, Asian. If you're saying that your race is superior, you are the same crap. It doesn't matter what. It's just because that Hitler was white, white Aryan, that we said it was worse, and that then the Jews who are preaching the same kind of stuff with their master race, even the Department of Religions and stuff, I said the Palestinians are inferior. I've even heard them say in quotes that they're animals before, refer to them as animals, that they're not even humans. This sounds like the same kind of crap that you heard in the South back during the Jim Crow laws, or other example in Germany when they were talking about the Jews and the Slavic people, that they called them subhumans. It's the same thing, and it's disgusting. And actually, I know we're about less than 20 minutes left here. If anybody wants to call in at 805.
Chris. Yeah, Chris, matter of fact, the number is 805-830-8329, but we do have James W. Live with us right now. Go ahead and let him add his points, and then I think we do have another caller after that, if you want to get to that.
Let's go with James W. first, and then we'll bring in the other caller. So,
all right, James.
Go ahead.
James, you're live.
Okay, I just want to talk about, there's a lot I could talk about. You guys are doing a great show tonight, but I want to talk about the psychological aspect of the whole Israel thing and how it relates to the Christianity of the nation. So you read the Bible and it tells you how Christians and Jews are supposed to be buddy-buddy and all this. But first of all, if you're a Jew, why wouldn't you be a Christian after Christ? Isn't that what he came for? I mean, why would you still be calling yourself a Jew? It seems kind of paradoxical to me but it's because, they can use that in the Holocaust that they created. Let's talk about the Holocaust. When the Holocaust happened, but when Hitler was trying to rise to power, he was put in power by Rothschilds. You guys already covered that. And when they did the Holocaust and murdered a bunch of Jewish people, they murdered the Jewish people who wouldn't reform to the new Judaism, which said, you could have a state of Israel before the return of the Messiah. So, I mean, that has to happen first before you can even have a state of Israel. And they've used that cover of, the Holocaust that we created. You can't talk shit about us and we can bomb whoever we want. and people bite it. So the Holocaust is like the key contributing factor, to the psychological warfare of getting people to stand for all these atrocities of Israel, which isn't even Israel to begin with.
Yeah.
It's it's a false state. You can't have one according to their own text. So
that's the thing, is that they say it's their promised land, but yet in their own in their own text they say that they're not supposed to have their state. They're supposed to be nomadic tribe, go around the world. But no, they have. But that's the thing. That's either not. Again, we were talking about back in when they went to escape from when they left from Palestine and went to Babylon. They wrote the Talmud and the Kabbalah. That's where they started writing the stuff that reformed Judaism to what it is today, and that's when you started having the Zionists are Talmudic Jews. That's what they are. They follow that, which says something totally different than the original Torah, and this is where they start having that superiority of their the master race, bringing them one of the chosen ones, bringing in the state of Israel one day, pretty much laying out their plans for a new world order one day, and that's where I think this is what happens to a lot of the religions all around the world, actually, is that the old world order forces that have been since the beginning trying to take over the world, they slowly infiltrate and then they change your religion, like when the old world order probably, I would say they infiltrated the first Christian church, split it up, caused the Great Schism to happen, and then they infiltrated the Catholic Church, and then they slowly ran it from there, and that's what happened. They caused that to happen. That whole kind of divide and conquer strategy. That's when it came to that, and and going ahead with your point is like when it came to that's exactly is that their own text contradicts what they're pretty much preaching nowadays, and there's all this preaching Christianity again about that we have to stand buddy with Israel, but it's not. The thing about that is that it's not even in their text says that it's a legal state. The state also. Let me remind everybody about this, and that Israel's nukes that they have tons of nuclear warheads, but we complain about countries like North Korea or whatever having illegal nukes. Israel nuke program is completely illegal, and also they've been using a chemical weapon, white phosphorus, on their own on Palestinian people, and but then they'll go in and Syria stuff. But they use chemical weapons. We use chemical weapons also. The United States used in Iraq. Let me remind you, white phosphorus is a chemical weapon. Just for anyone that doesn't know, don't let the mainstream media tell you otherwise. But I'm pretty sure that I've seen stuff that's trying to say it's not. But I've also seen stuff that says that Agent Orange is not that bad and crap like that. But so it just tells you about how the mainstream media will really just tell the opposite of the truth. Talk about other stuff, or talk about completely not even cover stuff like Fukushima. That's a whole different topic of how the media spins stuff. But I want to remind you also the media is ran by these same people that control, and that's what people really start to think. I'll say right here, Zionists and the 13 families will control the New World Order, and that's it. Those 13 families are who runs it. They run the 3 states that are going to control the world, and they run Israel. And go back to keep telling the points that you're telling, James.
Right. So you got the whole psychological warfare. So people cannot, for some reason, get past this. Oh, but they're Israel, and they're not. We're actually supporting the destruction of the people of Israel through depleted uranium and white phosphorus, as you're talking about.
That's
so
right.
Then you got it just doesn't make any sense. And there was something else.
Well, I mean, James, you got to understand that. I mean, what Chris is basically trying to say is they've conquered our financial system, they've conquered our political system, and they've conquered our religious system. They have reconstructed the history of all 3. Those are the 3 main pillars of our civilization in this country anyway. I'm not speaking as the world as a whole at this point. I'm speaking as the United States. They have
reconstructed our history in all three major realms, and once they accomplish that, we're all their puppets. And that's the psychological warfare. You know, when your media is telling you complete opposite of a show like this is telling you, you know, if you're sheeple and you buy into what the mainstream media tells you, they think we're crazy. They're going to shut us out, and they're not going to listen to us because they're brainwashed. That's the definition of brainwashed.
Right, man. It's like, how can you believe that TV tells you the truth? How can you believe when the TV? How can you believe the TV is telling you the truth when you can get two completely different stories on two different channels? It's like, oh, they're telling the truth. Well, who's telling the truth? One of them's lying. Actually, they're both lying, obviously. But, I mean, when they're both telling a different story, you got to know one of them's lying, so your TV cannot be telling you the truth. It can't be, you know, this old paradox, like, well, I picked this channel, so I know the truth. It's just retarded, man. People, like, they love it, though.
Well, they give you just enough truth on TV to make you think that they're legitimate. But that whole thing, you know, whether you're watching Fox or whether you're watching CNN or ABC or NBC, whatever damn news channel you decide you want to watch that day, they give you an opposite point of view for the whole purpose of dividing this nation against itself. I mean, you can defeat your enemy much easier. We're the enemy. I mean, and people need to start understanding who their enemy is. It's not us. It's not me. I'm not your enemy. I'm your neighbor. I live in the same place, the same cesspool you live in. I see the horror going on in the world just like you do. I'm just trying to understand it and research it while you're sitting there watching the TV and being taught this division, this hate, this racism. You know, we was talking earlier about the racism, you know, against the Jews, you know, that we're pretty much discussing tonight. But they tell you through the ADL and the Southern Law of Poverty, whatever, they tell you through all of these different alphabet groups to not hate the Jews, but then they get on your TV and they're tearing down the Arabic communities, they're tearing down the black communities, they're tearing down the white communities. They're pitting you against yourselves while they sit back and run to the damn bank with all the money and all the power.
Exactly. They're dividing everybody, and they're not going to let the people become unified. They're not going to. They spread this racism, black versus white, Christian versus Muslim, you know, Jewish versus Muslim, or whatever, and all this other hatred. You know, they make this also anti-Hispanic hate. They make this anti-Hispanic hatred on television. You know, calling them the dirty immigrants that are taking all our jobs and saying all that other crap. And they pretty much are saying that they will, and they'll do all that stuff. They're just making sure that they're going to divide people into so many little groups that there's really almost no chance that because you'll be fighting each other, you'll pretty much just kill each other off and do the depopulation for them practically. I think
exactly right.
To make sure that we are complacent with their old world order agendas and their ideals.
Right.
They want that. Like I said, it's not, you know, what's happening now and, you know, what will continue to happen will always be there for as long as people walk their life with blinders on. When you get that tunnel vision, you know what I mean, and you just keep on seeing one thing, somebody may be able to best relate it to maybe a drug experience or something where you get tunnel vision. Some people will say, you know, you smoke pot or you get zoned out. You know, and that's the state of, you know, and Pending says it, you know, best, man. He's got a lot of great analogies to kind of narrow that down to the sort of thinking that we've been subjected to. We have literally lost conscious thought. You know, conscious thought is when you are reading something, for instance, you are comprehending what you're reading. You know, if I was to read something to you, a definition of whatever, okay, I could then retain that information while I'm reading it, you know, set the paper down, turn everything around and say, you know, put everything aside and say, hey, you know, this is exactly, you know, word for word, almost like an eidetic memory or something. But that's completely different because, you know, eidetic memories are more so filling in there's basically in memory, short-term memory, long-term memory, there's gaps in the synapses, okay? And basically is what's happening is that's normal, okay? And the reason why it's like that is so we can keep a lot of, short order information at hand, such as when you read a book or, listen to the news and stuff like that. But again, if you are listening to the news or if you are reading a book that does not pertain to, in other words, if you're right, you can read and write all day long, but unless you understand and can convey what you do understand, you're just incompetent. And a lot of people, and I'm not trying to be mean in any ways because I've done that numerous times. I've read something numerous times and come back and been like, how the hell did I miss that? How, and it's complacency. It's me choosing to be ignorant. It was, like at the beginning of the show, at one point in time, it was me choosing to be ignorant and saying, hey man, there is no possible way that this couldn't have happened the way that they said it, that it went down. And you look at it and you end up learning. And what happens from that learning experience is, one of two things. Sometimes three, but you either go out there and you talk about it, or you kind of shelter it in to yourself and don't say anything about it to anybody. Maybe spread hints of this or that just to see how people will react. Because a lot of people, you got to remember, a lot of people. This is why I praise Chris, man. This is why I give you much praise, Chris J, for being on here and having a network to convey your message through to a young adult audience, because these are the people who are most likely to be subjected to losing their the I guess ascertainment of self-conscious thought, self-identity, so on and so forth. A lot of what we've been discussing here, especially within the last 30 minutes, which you guys have been discussing, it's basically what you guys are describing. It's a structural breakdown of individuality. When you have a structural breakdown of individuality, you'll have a lot of different things that will occur. Because what's happening is that human is trying to make up for the lack of, I guess, needed social interaction or socially accepted educational aspect of that. In other words, you can read things all day, you can be right about things all day, but unless you're wrong when you're wrong, and you can point those things out, thinking analytically and critically, you're just going to be a submissive opponent, submissive prisoner to that. I guess what do you guys call it, Chris? What do you guys call the schools there, the public schools? Was it the indoctrination camps? Is that what you call them?
What, the indoctrination camps?
Yeah, right. So, again, man, there's so much that I even, I'll go on other shows and I'll say certain things, man, and people be like, oh, come on now, sounds like you're supporting the cause a little bit, and it's like, hold on a second, it's the only reason why I'm saying this is because I can, and why should I repress any type of in other words, people think, and this is, consensus thought amongst, your average 9-to-5er, the average person who pays taxes, the average person who owns $500,000 in school loans, so on and so forth. The average thought to those people is that if you did not go through what they went through, in other words, if you didn't attend an Ivy League school, if you didn't go to Harvard or what have you, that the knowledge that you have ascertained is it's not it's what they would refer to as common knowledge, but they more refer to that as in commoner, the common person of what they know. And that's why I'm saying that common knowledge is really different from what we are told as this is intellectual, this is history. You know what I'm saying? So in other words, I'm trying to convey something at one point in time, man, I would never have done that. You know what I'm saying? For a lot of reasons, for fear of being called, a bigot, fear of people misinterpreting, what I had to say. But I know now, at the age of 29 and after, doing almost 3 years of radio, you know what I mean? I know now that literally this is what the forefathers that founded this country on good intentions intended for. They intended for people like us to stand up.
Yes, exactly. It's like those people. That's like if any last person wants to call in, we're about 2 minutes until going to overtime, and anyone who wants to keep listening, that's to call in at 805-830-8329. But I'm going to keep going here. Is that with our founding fathers intended us to stand up, and the ones that were not, they were not a secret society that eventually would infiltrate the United States. But that was the whole point. And then there's these people that are calling me, oh, you're a traitor and all that stuff, for saying whatever, criticize the United States government and the military policy. I'm like, do you even know what our founding fathers stood for? Could you even tell me what the first, second, third, fourth, last, or even what the Bill of Rights was? Could you even tell me? And they can't. And then again, that's that ROTC kind of crowd of my school. There's so many kids are in there like, I know stuff, I'm an ROTC. I know the all military stands for freedom and justice and blah, blah, blah. I'm like,
hold on a second. Back the fuck. Hold on. Back up. There was a couple things that I heard you say I kind of wanted to be like, what? But hold on. So you're saying that in school, like people get in the ROTC programs like through the schools? Like, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's in the schools. It's a class that they take, just to do marketing crap. And there's like 300 kids that walk around with uniforms on every Tuesday. They walk around with their uniforms on. It looks like a freaking military base in there. It's like 300 out of 1,500 kids.
In school?
Yeah, in
they
school.
dress like that in school. Don't you guys have, I know when I was in ninth grade, I know that they did not allow colors, or what we would refer to as rags, because rags were colors. People would show their affiliation to gangs or whatever by wearing certain types of colors and or flags, rags, whatever you'd like to call them. So basically, it was what I'm kind of getting from what you're saying is that in school, they do that. So I'm trying to wrap my mind around this because I heard about this before. Again, this is something that I've heard about before, and I just kind of dismissed and overpassed. One, because I knew and I know that the ROTC of Obama for college is really adamant, and that's the type of things that I've seen it pertaining to was college kids. I had no idea, and shame on me for shit's sake, figuring, hey man, they got to start way earlier than this, and for an indoctrination camp, that's directly on, and they want to call you a traitor, they want to say this or that. Well, I mean, these people are in commission of high treason. Criminal conspiracy, at least to commit treason, because of the fact that they are not operating under an American government. They're operating under a rogue government. So when you see these people, as a matter of fact, if I were you, is what I would do, because that shows affiliation to a gang, crew, or membership. I think it was your friend there, Chris, Timothy there, he was talking about they banned him for wearing some 9/11 shirt or something like that.
Yeah,
so
they suspended him for that, I think.
Now, do they have the same thing in his school as well, Chris? Do you know if in Timothy's school if they have that same thing, the ROTC?
There's a high likelihood that there is, considering that there's quite a few schools that have that. But I don't know, maybe not his school. But what's the disturbing thing is I noticed that the schools that have the lowest test scores, they put the Army ROTC right there. And then, okay, so going right at the minority, the poor minority, and stuff, and they're going to put them in their ROTC uniform and condition them to go to the Army starting from ninth grade. That's pretty much what happened. And then you have, what's the weirdest thing that I ever seen was when I saw people, they're literally people, Arabic people in that ROTC, and then they're like, we're standing for something good. I'm like, they're literally causing your part of your part of the world to go up in the flames just so they can steal some oil and take some things. But no one ever listens to me when it comes to that. But yeah, I don't know about Tennessee school if they do that, but I know that that my school that they walk around in uniforms a lot, and they really incorporate into they do into our school, and you just see them walking around in full uniform, in the pickle suit, or sometimes even in actually
let me tell you something, bro. And this is just my opinion, okay? Completely my opinion. Do not take this wholeheartedly, man. But honestly, dude, if I would have seen some shit like that at my school back in the day, dude, it would have been, I would not let somebody, dude, that's like, I don't know, that's like watching a Russian tank roll down Flatbush Avenue. I don't know, man, that's just, it's unsettling, it's unnerving, and it's way too Nazi-esque, Hitler's youth, for me to handle. Timothy came to me and he actually said, look, dude, he's like, I'm getting sick of being harassed at school, and, his concerns are very valid, and I feel for him, I really do. Because he was saying, hey, man, not only can I not learn because it's an indoctrination camp, but when I am trying to learn, or what have you, they want to just suspend somebody. I was like, well, what do you mean? And he was like, okay, well, I'm pretty sure this was Tim that said that he was standing outside and they were smoking a cigarette or something like that, or one of the electronic cigarettes, and they came up to him. And they were like, yeah, blah, blah. And he was sitting there reciting, I hope it's not you that I had this and that I was talking to. I'm pretty sure it was Timothy, but he was saying that,
it was Timothy.
The school cop came. Yeah, okay, good, thanks. Thanks. So the school cop came up to him and he was like, yo, what the fuck you guys doing? I told you guys not to smoke here anymore. And he was saying that this person saw them a few days prior smoking cigarettes or what have you. So under the assumption that they were doing something illegal according to the school code or what have you, that on a day prior, and that he wasn't able to get to them for a day prior at that point in time, he then went to them 2 days later and said, where's the cigarettes at? In other words, nobody's sitting there, doing what they were doing a couple days ago. What have you. The point of the matter is that for him saying, I have my constitutional right, you got a search warrant for me and my friends here to ask some questions, and they singled them out, I guess, and, they were saying he had to leave school for that shirt or what have you. Now, with this new knowledge that I have, and I now know that this type of thing goes on, that is the serious, dude, that's, in other words, if his school has some sort of dress code where you cannot wear affiliation, colors, rags, or uniforms, that would fall under to that school code, and they would either have to do one of two things. They'd either have to make those kids abide by it, suspend them, or they'd have to do away with that school code. Well, one of the three things, one of them would have to happen. Thank you for letting me know that so I can now convey to him, hey, man, if you're still pissed off about this, this is what you got to do. And again, Chris, I would suggest, man, if you get, like you said, there's a couple of people who know what's going on in your school, and, they could probably thank you for that, man. But, I would get whoever you can, one or two people, maybe even somebody in your community, maybe even, somebody who's, a little bit older, that way, they don't see you as just a kid or whatever, because I know how that stereotype is really horrible, especially when you know more than what the average adult does. But, regardless, man, that is, I can't even explain how I feel about that, dude, because, I was like, the people say, oh, Obama's Hitler's Youth, right? And I was like, oh, well, it's just, college funding program, so I guess that's a choice, right? I mean, when you indoctrinate this into a school with kids, I don't care if they're 16 years old, 15 years old, that's a child. That's a child. That's a mentality that is still developing. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly correct. And that's stealing their identity.
Oh, you want to talk about stealing their identity. And here's the thing, is that there's all this jealousy and crap. I see these people like, I'm a fucking corporal. Yeah, I'm a staff sergeant. And then, you know what their tests are? They just do these oaths that they mindlessly do, that says all this crap. That's how they get promoted. That they do these boards, like, in the Army, but they just oaths pretty much that they take, and then say whatever they want to convey in there, and then, or questions that they ask, and it's creepy as all hell. They brainwash these kids, and then the rest of the school has to get used to the normal idea of kids sitting in ACUs, your blue uniforms, your green uniforms, and the pickle suit, and just sitting there in class and doing work. When you really think about it, it's disturbing. There's just conditioning. That's one of the things we talk about. One of the main ways to brainwash is to condition and make, desensitize. Make things that are really odd seem like they're normal, which that is really odd. Yeah, I've seen what kind of crap that goes. These schools are bad, and I'm so glad that in January I'm taking the PERT and hoping to get away the hell away from that school and go to community college and move on, next year, because It's a completely indoctrination center. It's creepy at all. Like, and if you want to hear other creepy stuff that happened at my school this year, here's some stuff. So, earlier this year, we had a complete dress code that the ROTC still got to wear whatever they were, got to wear what they wanted, their military uniform. But the
get
rest
up
of the school had to go under no logo,
and
no
howl
anything. So
about America and
freedom
democracy.
speech that eventually was pulled.
There is no America. There is no democracy.